The day 14-year-old Alara Voss stopped believing she would ever stand again, her mother quietly removed the small pair of white sneakers from the bedroom floor and placed them in a box. No one noticed her doing it except Alara. She watched from her wheelchair through the open doorway, her eyes fixed on those shoes as if they belonged to a different life. A life before the accident. A life before doctors, hospital rooms, endless examinations, and promises that slowly turned into cautious silence. Outside, bright morning sunlight poured across the enormous glass windows of the Voss family mansion, illuminating the gardens and fountains, but inside Alara felt as though the world had become smaller every day. Her father, Damien Voss, was one of the most successful technology CEOs in the country. His name appeared on magazine covers, business awards lined the walls of his office, and his company employed thousands of people. Yet none of that mattered when he entered Alara's room each morning and saw his daughter staring silently at the ceiling. He had spent millions searching for specialists, rehabilitation programs, and experimental therapies. He had flown doctors across continents and rented entire rehabilitation facilities for his daughter. But every attempt ended the same way. Alara's body had survived the accident, but her confidence had slowly disappeared. If you believe kindness can create second chances, please take a moment to like this story, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Kindness Corner 2.0. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can become the beginning of a life-changing journey. One bright Tuesday morning, Damien arrived home earlier than usual and found Alara sitting alone beside the garden window. She had a sketchbook on her lap, but the page was blank. Her father approached carefully and asked whether she wanted to go outside. Alara shook her head. She told him she was tired of people looking at her with pity. She was tired of doctors telling her to be patient. Most of all, she was tired of everyone promising that tomorrow might be different when tomorrow always looked exactly like yesterday. Damien tried to reassure her, but she turned toward the window and said quietly that she no longer wanted to try. Those words frightened him more than any medical report ever had. That afternoon, Damien's longtime assistant arranged for a new maintenance worker to repair several things around the estate. His name was Nolan Mercer, a 38-year-old single father who had spent most of his adult life working with machinery, building repairs, and mechanical equipment. Nolan arrived in a simple gray work shirt, dark trousers, and worn work boots. He was not wealthy, famous, or connected to the powerful world Damien lived in. He was simply a hard-working father raising his 8-year-old son, Milo, while taking whatever honest jobs he could find. Nolan was repairing a damaged garden railing when he noticed Alara watching him from a distance. He did not stare at her wheelchair. He did not lower his voice or offer the kind of sympathetic smile she had grown to hate. Instead, he simply nodded, returned to his work, and continued tightening a loose metal bracket. For some reason, that ordinary reaction caught Alara's attention. The next morning, Nolan returned to repair an old greenhouse door. Alara was there again. This time, she asked what he was doing. Nolan explained that the door had been sticking because one hinge was slightly misaligned. He told her that sometimes a problem looked enormous until someone discovered the small part causing it. Alara looked at the door and then at him. She asked whether he thought everything could be fixed. Nolan paused before answering. He said that he did not believe everything could be fixed in the way people wanted, but he believed almost anything could be approached differently. That sentence stayed with Alara. Over the next several days, Nolan began noticing small details about her. She loved drawing buildings. She enjoyed puzzles. She had once dreamed of becoming an architect. She hated being treated as fragile. And although she rarely admitted it, she missed feeling useful. Nolan also understood something about hopelessness because he had experienced his own difficult years. After losing his wife to an illness, he had struggled to keep working while raising Milo alone. There had been nights when he wondered whether he could continue. But his son had taught him that sometimes moving forward did not mean making a giant leap. Sometimes it meant getting out of bed, opening the curtains, and trying again. One afternoon, Nolan found Alara staring at the garden path. He noticed that the path had several uneven stones that made it difficult for her wheelchair to pass comfortably. Instead of telling her what she should do, he asked whether she wanted to help him redesign it. Alara looked surprised. He showed her a sketch of a smoother path and asked for her opinion. For the first time in months, someone had asked her to create something instead of asking what was wrong with her. She began drawing. Soon, Alara and Nolan worked together on a small garden project. Nolan handled the physical repairs while Alara designed the layout. Damien initially thought it was simply a distraction, but he soon noticed something changing. His daughter started waking earlier. She spent more time outside. She began asking questions again. Then Nolan made a suggestion that changed everything. He believed Alara needed a rehabilitation routine that focused not only on physical exercises but also on rebuilding confidence through small, achievable goals. He spoke with Damien and Alara's medical team, making it clear that he was not a doctor and would never replace professional care. He simply wanted to help Alara find reasons to keep participating in her rehabilitation. Damien was skeptical. But Alara agreed. The first goal was simple. She would sit independently for a few extra seconds during her supervised exercises. The next goal was to complete a drawing while maintaining proper posture. Then she worked on controlled movements under professional supervision. Some days went well. Others were frustrating. There were mornings when Alara cried because progress seemed painfully slow. There were afternoons when she wanted to quit. But Nolan never told her that success was guaranteed. He reminded her that progress could be measured in many ways. One rainy morning, Alara became angry after a difficult rehabilitation session. She told Nolan that everyone was lying to her and that she would never become the person she used to be. Nolan listened without interrupting. Then he told her something he had learned as a father: she did not have to become the person she used to be. She could become someone new, someone who understood strength in a way she had never understood before. Alara looked at him for a long moment. Then she picked up her pencil. Months passed. The garden path was completed, and Alara's design was framed near the entrance. Damien had it placed there because he wanted everyone who entered the property to see that the design belonged to his daughter. But the biggest change happened during a family celebration one bright spring afternoon. Alara had been participating in supervised rehabilitation consistently. Her medical team had documented gradual improvements in strength and control, though they had always been careful not to promise a complete recovery. That afternoon, Alara sat beside the garden while Damien spoke with guests. Nolan was helping Milo build a small wooden model nearby. Suddenly, Alara called Nolan's name. Everyone turned. She had placed both hands firmly on the support bars beside her. With her therapist nearby and her father watching anxiously, she carefully shifted her weight and attempted something she had not tried in months. She rose with assistance. It lasted only a few seconds. But to Damien, it felt like the entire world had stopped. Alara lowered herself back into her chair, breathing heavily. Her eyes filled with tears. Not because she had suddenly become completely independent. Not because everything had magically changed. But because she had finally discovered that hope did not require a guarantee. Damien walked toward Nolan with tears in his eyes. He asked why Nolan had cared so much when he had been hired simply to repair things around the estate. Nolan looked toward Milo and smiled. He explained that he knew what it meant to watch someone you love struggle, and he also knew that sometimes people did not need someone to save them. They needed someone willing to stay beside them while they found their own strength. Damien offered Nolan a much larger position within his company, but Nolan politely refused. He wanted to keep working independently and raising his son. Instead, Damien funded a community rehabilitation and adaptive design program inspired by Alara's garden project. Alara became involved in designing accessible spaces for children facing mobility challenges. Years later, that small garden became one of her proudest memories. She never forgot the day she believed her future was over. And she never forgot the ordinary maintenance worker who refused to treat her like a broken person. Nolan had never promised Alara that she would walk again. He had promised something far more meaningful. He promised that she would not have to face her hardest days alone. And sometimes, that is what hope really is. Not a promise that everything will become perfect. Not a guarantee that every dream will happen exactly as imagined. Hope is simply having enough courage to take the next step, whatever that step looks like. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Kindness Corner 2.0. Your support helps these emotional stories reach people who may need a little hope today. Before we end, leave a comment saying, "Kindness can change a life." Let those words remind us that we never truly know how much one patient, compassionate person can mean to someone struggling. Because Nolan did not change Alara's life with money, power, or promises. He changed it by seeing the person behind the wheelchair. And on that bright afternoon, as Alara looked across the garden she had designed herself, she finally understood something she had forgotten long ago. Her story had never ended. It was only beginning.